Hello and welcome to a very special edition of the Tea Room. First of all, let me introduce our small but illustrious panel. We have on my shoulder here, number one right-hand man, Palm. Hello, Palm.
Hello, Tickers. Everybody. Hello, everybody.
And number two right-hand man below me, Batch Guitar. How are we doing, Batch?
I'm doing very well. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Okay, so tonight we have a very special guest. We have a vintage super collector, and he's known to the world as Roni M. Good evening, Roni M. How are you, sir?
Hi, guys. How are you all? Thank you for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure, Roni.
We're great.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yes.
Now, I'd just like to ask you first if you can let me know what got you into collecting the amazing watches you have and how your watch journey began, please, Roni.
I started like everyone else. It was sort of meandering into different brands, and it started, I think, at the age of, when I got to university in London. I went to the LSE, so on the way there, you always pass fancy watch shops, and you sort of look into the windows and stuff. So that got my interest in watches. But even before that young age, I was interested. I think the background is, I think I'm interested in arts, and I see watches as a form of art on your wrist. So that's why I collect what I do, which is design genre, design driven watches rather than sort of complications and stuff. Like if you tell me a chronograph, I don't understand what the use of a functionality of a chronograph is to an ordinary human being. I'm in Africa, so everything is late. So yeah, if you're waiting for someone, you're bored out of your mind, you want to measure how late they are, okay, I can see the value of a chronograph. But in the normal world, I see no value to sort of, complications. Yeah, if you're sort of wealthy enough to afford a repeater or something, all good. You can hear it sort of chiming away, whatever. But generally, it's my passion is design-driven watches, design sort of based watches, and it's sort of grown and evolved. Like all collectors, I started collecting everything, and then over time, and as your means increase with sort of age, you sort of then become more specific, and as you attain more knowledge, it's grown. That's the journey, really.
Excellent. Thank you.
Just additional to following on from John's question there, what was the first watch you ever bought?
It was a Baume & Mercier. I saw it on Watches of Switzerland on Bond Street, but I used to walk past it. I think it was about 16 months to save up the money. It was 550 quid. And I must have gone there to see it about 15 times. I think I thought to myself.
Oh, wow.
But, and then I remember, actually, it's so funny. So I saw the lady, the French lady who was there selling. I saw it I think about 5-10 years ago working somewhere else. And I said, I know you won't remember me, but like 20 years ago, I bought my first watch from you. So, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, wow, there you go. So, coincidence. And so on to my question. So I follow you on Instagram, an absolutely amazing account. If anyone wants to follow that in the audience, please follow Roni M, Roni_M. And just the collection of vintage Art Deco dress pieces you have. For me, it was mind-blowing, and it actually opened my eyes to a lot of the Trinity brands as not just being hype brands, but actually being proper horological, monsters. So can you, of the Trinity watch brands, which is your favorite and why?
I've focused. I think probably 70% of my watches are Patek Philippe. The reason is that I think there's more information available on it. That's probably one reason. Secondly, during that era I collect, so it's really from 1945 until 1965, and that for me is the belle epoque of watch design.
Yeah.
Because you had sort of before the war, during the war and before, you had the Depression, and then wartime there's austerity. So design was simple and stuff. And at the end of the war, like everything else, people's expectations were unleashed, and everything, design, architecture, design, art. It really was a different beginning of a different era. And I think watchmakers and brands, as we call them now, were more prone to experiment and push the boundaries of design. So I think in those 20 years, you saw absolutely amazing designs, which fascinate me personally. And okay, nowadays, they won't do it because the cost of launching a new design watch or a new line is just prohibitively expensive. B, you have sort of corporate egos. None of these guys want to take risks or something. They'll play middle of the road and do basic things where they think they won't go wrong. They'll minimize the risk. So that I think I've meandered. I think in your question, I've forgotten what the question was.
Off your Trinity brands, it sounds like Patek is your favorite brand.
Yeah, it is. And okay, sorry, just if I'm just sorry to interrupt. So okay, then during I found that Patek Philippe became expensive. It wasn't affordable, and to get nice quality pieces, which is important for collectors. So I looked into AP, and I think from 5 years ago, you could pick up lovely APs. I know for about $2,000, $3,000, which is still a lot of money, but you could pick up lovely watches from audemard Piguet, and now they've sort of increased and stuff. And Vacheron, I still feel they did made lovely case watches, even the dials, Guilloche dials. There's still lovely watches available. So that's the reason for the Trinity, really.
Okay. So there was another part of my question actually that I was going to ask, which you've actually just led into, is do you feel Vacheron Constantin is neglected in that Trinity, and why do you think that is in terms of recognition?
Well, I've not had a good sort of experience with them, and I know this is funny. So I don't know, 25 years ago, I bought a mystery dial, and I wanted it. The dial had some issues, and I just wanted it aligned. It was actually they basically took the watch in. They messed up the dial in the terms of the lettering, and then 3 turns, and 2 years later, it was so screwed up that I didn't even want the watch. And someone raised this issue. Why are you 35 years later still moaning and bitching about Vacheron? But what do you want them
That's
to
it.
do?
Once bitten, twice shy.
Done it,
Yeah, of course.
I think I've got over it in the last
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not sure about
couple of years, and I've started in Vacheron.
And the third part of my question. I know you're a big Cartier fan, and from a dress watch perspective, rather than a complication perspective, do you think Cartier belongs at that level of horology in terms of being one of the big players because of the historical stuff they've done with watches?
Okay, my sort of perception of Cartier, it's always been, I envisage, and my views of Cartier, it's always using fancy French or maison related to design, be it watches or be it jewelry or whatever. From the very beginning, Cartier was about design. It is probably the design house. They did this sort of walk in the woods going into complicated watches. I think it was in the mid 2000s, and it was a real folly. And I think they came to terms. They bought up, and they made these big watches, 45 millimeters, something you could see in the boiler room of the Titanic, which a drug dealer would wear or something. No offense to drug dealers, but they weren't Cartier watches in my mind. So if you look at the historic lineup, they're always lovely design-driven watches. So, and in fact, one of the early watches I bought was the Tank American, and I think it's they make lovely time-only
beautiful
watches if you appreciate that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That's my three-pronged question. I think over to Andy now with his.
Yeah, sure. Well, my first is a question about one of the APs you have in your collection. It just blew my mind. And it was an all hobnail. I think it was a 34 millimeter AP, and the dial was all hobnail, the bezel and the lugs, silver, all silver. Actually, probably white gold. Sorry. It just absolutely stunning. So I don't know if you know the piece I referenced to, and just your feelings around that piece.
I don't know. Okay, the problem with sort of time only and vintage AP, there is no reference source. I mean, there's with Patek you can find books and stuff. So this is very, very difficult on AP, and everyone asks me what's the reference number. I to be honest, I don't know. And I'm not a watchman. Even if I change a strap, I scratch the watch. I'm reluctant to open up watches to find out the reference numbers, and even movement which movement is there. I'll be honest, I'm clueless most of the time. For me, it's the design of the watch rather than the innards of it. I think I'm vain and shallow. It's like a pretty woman. You look at her, I don't. She might be a nasty person, but I'll still, if she's a nice looking woman,
huh?
I'll talk to her.
Yeah. Absolutely. But I really admire that piece. I probably have time just to squeeze one last one, and that would be around the Cartier Crash, such an iconic piece in your collection. And yeah, just your feelings around that piece. Like, I think that's
I've always, thank you. I've always sort of dreamt about it and stuff. And I think it was in 2018, George Kramer, who I think most of us know as the Cartier man, he rang me and said, well, they're taking out a limited edition for the London boutique, and if you're interested, contact Philippa, who's my contact, and a lovely lady at Cartier, and a human face. Most of these brands have not nice people who treat you like shit, but she's actually a very lovely person at Bond Street. I'm plugging her. But so they did this edition of 67 pieces, 67 being the year they came out with the original one, and the price was okay. I had to save up, and I didn't have to sell the wife and child, but it was affordable. So I was fortunate. So I had the opportunity to get the black dial one, and it's one of the pieces I really do love.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. No, congratulations as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So moving along, Roni, we understand you have brought a nice, obviously incredible selection of watches with you. I'm going to put you on full screen, and could you basically talk us through what you love about these watches and the stories behind them, and the motivation and stories behind why you bought them and where you bought them?
Sure. Okay, so I'm going to start off. The first one I have is a universal. Hang on, I'm trying to figure out how to hold this.
That's fine. So
slightly up a bit.
Face,
yeah,
okay,
face, sorry.
Yeah, just slightly higher. Okay. There you go.
There you are.
Yes,
perfect. That's a perfect position, sir. Perfect. Okay. Thank you.
So basically, so I do collect other brands, by the way. But I came across this. It's a universal from 1937, in absolute mint condition, and I think the story behind it is probably, and it had the original dog tags, whatever you call them. And the story behind it was found in Germany when they were I think it was in Hamburg or in Berlin, I can't remember. They were breaking a building and they found a cache of watches hidden away. So I always think, what was the story behind it? Was it people putting away something during the war to for another time, or so I think that makes the story, and I think I relate to each watch having a particular story to me, whether it's about the watch itself, or is it about acquiring that watch. So that the universal is special for that to me.
Oh, beautiful piece.
1937, you say?
Yeah.
1937.
Incredible.
What size is that? What size is that? 30?
It's about 36, 35,
36. Yeah.
Wow.
Beautiful.
But with the originals, all the original tags and stuff, it made it more special. The second one I'm going to show you.
Sorry, can you start the strap original on that as well?
No, I did get the original strap. I've changed it. I just kept it to preserve it from a historical point of view. Yeah. Otherwise it'll get sweaty and nasty.
Yes.
Okay. This watch is one of the earliest Pateks I've got. The reference again. In my young age, I used to be nerdy and know all the references, but with older, I'm just forgetting them. But this is from 1943, so produced during the war. And you always think, about the sort of wartime production and stuff like that.
Could we get a close look at that, please, Roni? Yeah. Just towards the lens. If you put it in front of the lens, that would really.
Oh,
yes.
But it's got, if you see, it's got those four sort of things holding the sort of
over the crystals.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
it's very Art Deco and stuff. This one's quite small. So it was found in Spain, and I think they were done in a series. of about 4 different watches with each slightly different. But it's very rare and stuff. And in fact, Hermann Goering had a similar one. So I did find that sort of information. Yeah, so that's that one. My third one is actually this one seems to interest, and it's a Zenith.
Oh wow!
Very nice.
This is from the 60s, and what caught my eye was obviously the numerals on it.
The size of the numerals. I imagine are those numerals pretty big?
No, they are quite big in relation.
They are quite. I just thought because I thought they
are. That's the perfect spot there, just there.
Just there. That is perfect.
But there's a bit of reflection, and it's got the sort of date window and stuff. But again, it was the dial, the layout and stuff. I tried to find out a bit more. It was made specifically for the Italian market at the time.
Oh, I see.
But again, if you ask me what's the model number and so, I don't know what it is.
What year is
that's
that?
From the late 60s.
Late 60s. Thank you. Wow.
And the date window is at 12, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Interesting.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Very nice.
So
very
cool.
Nice.
Okay. My next one is a Vacheron, the cornucopia. This is from 1955. What's interesting is the inscription on the back, which says, I'm trying to read, 1954, and the name Dolly. So when I bought it, I mean, I always thought it's a relatively small watch, but who on earth would be called Dolly? Is what which always sort of troubled. It was at the back of my mind. So when I posted this, someone a guy in New York who's he's actually an Englishman who stays in New York, and he's very he was in the world of sort of jewelry and Cartier and stuff. So he got in touch with me. He says, well, he knew the guy. So he was actually a jeweler from Vienna in Germany, and he fled to America, and his name was Adolf. And obviously, when you came to America, you didn't want to keep a name like Adolf during the before the war started.
Post-war, no.
And his name, he got called Dolly, and he was a jeweler on 47th Street. So that solved that mystery of who Dolly was for me.
Incredible.
But this is the kind of thing what I love about vintage watches. When they have these stories and stuff. This particular dial has that the Calatrava cross in the dial and stuff. But it's so that's that one. The next one I'm going to show you is it's an Audemars Piguet. It's quite rare. In fact, they don't have the one with the original dial. And they even came. The guy was in charge of the heritage department, Michael Friedman. He met up with me once when I was in London a few years ago and wanted to take pictures and stuff like that. And I found this. It's also got a engraving on the back, and it's funny. Like people, even myself, when I started collecting, if it had engraving, it was like a no. But I've come to love engravings and stuff. So it's got the initials of the guy, 1964. I found this in Mexico City. It was an architect who owned it, and then I met up with him in New York, and he brought it over for me. But it's got a two-tone dial. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, I can see that.
From the mid-60s.
What kind of shape is that? That is so Art Deco.
It's round, but that two-tone dial is just absolutely lovely.
Stunning, absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Am I doing okay for time? I'm trying to.
Yeah, fine. We've got plenty of time.
We've got loads of time. We could do with slowing it up a bit if that's possible. Looking at more closely at the beautiful painting. We don't get to see these on the ticket show every day. My God, we don't.
No.
Okay, so
wonderful.
This one is one of the Gilbert. So the background for those who are not too familiar, he was a Genevan jeweler where he started his career, ended up in that. But he joined Patek Philippe at the age of 19 and worked with them for about 5 years. And he did 4 watches for them. The various sort of made in different sort of unusual shapes. And it was very avant-garde for its early 50s. and he continued to the 50s. And what's unusual, I think, is they had some of these for sale in some of the boutiques right up to the 80s, where they were unsold. Now they're very extremely popular and in demand and stuff. So this was one of them, and the story for me is I was in New York and on the loo one morning and looking at my phone, and I saw the listing with the watch dealer. I didn't even get off the loo. I just rang him up straight away. And said I want
Does he know?
You snooze, you lose. Yeah.
And it's this as well. He said that after I listed it, and I must have seen it. I don't know, my luck was there. He must have so many phone calls with people saying they want it. He says, "Well, you were first, and so you managed to get it." So I've got a couple of these. But that Lou story is the one that
interesting one, yeah.
You're on the loo, but he wasn't a crap buy. Crikey, yeah. Absolutely. Wow, beautiful.
Incredible.
What shape case would you call that, Ronnie? What would you call that?
I think they call it. I think it's called. Well, it's called an asymmetric. I guess it's. I don't know what.
Sure.
Yeah, but, I mean,
Yeah.
but that covers. It's rather a broad description, which covers anything that's sort of odd shaped. There were four made. I've got 3 of them. One is sort of very rare. I've seen it, but I've never been able to afford that one when it comes up. Okay, and then moving on is another sort of focus I've developed in the last 5 years is collecting retailer signed Patek Philippe's, which are also, the case is interesting in terms of design, so keeping to my ethos of unusually shaped, but to have retail, and there's two sort of retailer types I've looked at. One is retailers, the ones who sold Patek Philippe, who've subsequently closed down and no longer exist, and then there's the ones from South America. So this particular one I'm going to show you is from a retailer for Patek Philippe called Black Star and Gorham. It's a 2552. It's like a UFO case, sort of step case.
Just there, sir.
Just hold it there, yeah.
Fine.
Just
okay.
little to your left.
Slightly, slightly.
There you go.
Yeah,
That's it.
up
Yes,
there.
there.
But that place is. Sorry, you can't see your face, sir, but we find that is the best place.
And I don't know if you can
right now.
Because the camera
and
concentrates on the face, it'll just be a photo. That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
And you can see the signature. So Black Star and Gorham were retailers who sold Patek Philippe in New York and in Manhattan, and they obviously don't exist anymore.
That's my favorite so far.
This one's from 1957, and it's also got an inscription of the. Sure,
there you go. That's it. There you go. Spot on.
Yeah, there we go. Wow.
Joe Howard, is it?
Yeah.
Howard, yeah.
Wow.
From so to Howard from. I'm trying to read it backwards. From Henry, 1957.
Wow.
So I've been searching for that. Okay, and then I go to the next one, which is I mentioned the South American one. So this is another Patek with an unusual case.
There you go.
This one is signed Arte Suiza, who are the dealers in Colombia for Patek Philippe.
Okay. Oh, even to this day.
No, they no longer exist.
Oh, okay. No,
right.
Okay.
I think they exist as jewelers, but they don't exist. They're not dealers of Patek Philippe anymore. Sorry, cover. I think. Yeah.
There you go. That's
incredible. Yeah, those lugs are amazing.
I know.
Yeah,
in such good condition as well. The case, it's just really.
But
isn't it?
This one's got a bit of staining on the dial. I compromised that, but the way I saw it, I'm not going to find another one. So it was another.
Yeah.
Okay, this one is this is a reference 2481. And it's signed. Gosh, this is
a bit higher.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go.
Wow.
Beautiful. Oh, spot on.
Patek Philippe. Yeah.
And this one signed Sir Pico y Lanier, and they were the dealers in Venezuela. And that was a booming. I mean, it always had the sort of oil revenue. So compared to South American countries, it was always booming, and there's a lot of wealth.
Okay.
And I think it was a big market for Patek Philippe in the 1950s. And then you look at them now, not not so great. So that's that one, and I've got a couple more to show. This one's a Cartier, and I designed the dial for this.
Oh, really?
Designed the dial.
Designed the dial. Excellent.
So it's not
American?
no, it's the Centre.
Centre. Okay, yeah.
Okay, just there, perfect. Yeah,
there
just
you
there,
go.
it's perfect,
Oh,
sir.
wow.
Thank you.
I love that.
Oh, wow, love that. Yeah.
Okay, so
wow.
the story to is in 2009, I did a special order dial. This was before Richemont took over, and Cartier was the old Cartier. You know, where you could sit and chat to the guys, and they didn't want you out of the shop. And the manager was a lovely guy, on Old Bond Street, right at the end of Bond Street. So I did one then. It was the same dial, and I sketched it, and they did it, and it took 2.5 years or 3 years. And the dial for that one was a sort of cream colored and black numerals. So recent then in 2000 and I stopped. Basically, that was the only one I did and could afford to do and stuff. And then when Richemont took over, they basically discouraged the making of custom watches, because, you know, they said, oh, if you want to do it, it's going to cost you a few £100,000 or something stupid. But to give you an idea and to give others, so normally they charge these days, it's about 5% more than the normal price of that model, which is, I think, is very, very fair and, you know, very reasonable.
Yeah.
So I did that same design, but reversed out, which is, I think, quite nice and works quite well.
It's really, really cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of classic sort of dial design. I mean, it's got the numerals. A lot of people ask, what's the procedure and stuff. So you've got to, when you do a design, you work with them. And it's got to sort of have the DNA of Cartier in terms of design. If you choose something random, like with Mickey Mouse hands or something, they're not going to do it, and it just wastes everyone's times. But, you know, I think so. Doing your homework and learning about the brand and so on, that's kind of the fun, I think, of doing something like a custom watch and stuff.
Absolutely, yeah.
And yeah, so that's that. And then I've got the one I'm wearing. This is this is a 1950s. The dial's a bit stained, so I apologize. A 1950s Cartier from Paris.
Santos? Which one is that?
No, I can't find anywhere any reference to it. It may be a unique piece.
Oh, wow.
So the case is very unusual. I've asked help, and unfortunately, Cartier is a brand. So one of my sort of complaints is that, you know, they don't help collectors of vintage watches. There's no access to the archives, and they won't sort of verify anything for you. One of the reasons for that is I think they're worried of lawsuits, and because the watches are relatively simple to fake, so buying vintage Cartiers is a real minefield. So anyone contemplating it, you've got to be very careful. Do your homework carefully. Consult other collectors, and, you know, but from Cartier itself, you can't, unless you're the original owner or from the family of the original owner of the watch, and you can prove that, they won't give you any paperwork from their archives.
Oh,
so that's kind of a bit sad, I think. And I think this is where, when a big conglomerate like Richemont takes over, they, you know, on one side they talk of their heritage and they position the brand on the heritage and, you know, all the other waffle, but you have to substantiate that and, you know, help. I think, you know, that's where I think I lean more towards Patek Philippe, is that, you know, you can get what they call the certificate, the extract from the archives, which verifies when the watch was made and all that kind of information. So I think it's important that brands walk the talk when it comes to vintage.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, out of the best is, I think, Longines, and they really are. I mean, I don't have one or two pieces, but I know friends who collect vintage Longines, and they're very responsive. They didn't charge anything at all, actually, and, you know, very knowledgeable, and they'll tell you that watch was sold in Ethiopia in 1924, you know, and stuff. They really are
They've got
amazing.
Everything, have they?
Yeah. Most of the information, I was invited to Cartier when I was in London last year, upstairs to the archives, and they have records of everything. When collecting vintage, I think it's important, you know, to do your homework. I think social media is amazing in that sense, because you have access to so many folk who collect watches, and I think most people are very, very welcoming to answer questions and share knowledge and stuff. And I think that's the beauty. And I always say that, what social media has done, and probably what COVID's done, that whole lockdown when people spent so much time on it, is it's changed the whole dynamics of watch collecting, because you have collectors who have become extremely knowledgeable, and probably more so than the brands. You can't bullshit them anymore. And I think that's really changed, put the whole the whole industry really. And I think that's wonderful. And the access to information immediately. I get probably, I don't know, 20 to 50 direct mails a day, and I try and answer them. Some are dumb and daft, but there are people who ask questions which are very valid, and I'm always happy to share. And I always, if I see something which I don't know anything, you pretty much know. And my daughter laughs that you can, when I go to different locations and cities, you meet random strangers, but there is this commonality, meeting like-minded people and stuff. So I think it's really wonderful. And I think, I know I spend too much time on Instagram and stuff, but so it's a great source of knowledge for me.
You're not the only one.
I think, so that's one, meeting other like-minded people, and from a greedy aspect, to be offered watches of the genre I collect. A lot of people, say, well, we have this, and would you be interested in stuff? So there are a lot of benefits from it and stuff. So I think it's great fun.
It's a great community, I believe.
Yeah.
Of your watches, so this is off the script. We've got loads of time. Which is your favorite piece that you own? Or would you rather not?
It's like being asked to pick your favorite child. I could probably narrow it down to probably 10, I think. But
depend what band chose, or
how many children do you have?
Just the one. I have a funny story. So when we were thrown out of Uganda, my background of Ugandan, Asian of Ugandan origin, so I was put in boarding school here, and it was like, first of all, to have that whole expulsion, and then be put in this alien boarding school. And I remember at a mealtime, you sit on these long tables with the teacher at the end doling out the food. And what do you talk to this guy for that quick 20 minutes where you got to clear your plate and stuff? So I just asked him, how much do you earn? And he turned around and said, well, I don't ask how many wives your father has. And I didn't understand at the time. I thought, real bastard. But, it's a typical British wit, but it's funny. That put me in my place. I learned a lot from that. So it's digressing off watches, but...
That's a great song.
So I have a genuine, like not a non in your collection kind of question, but so from your Instagram, one thing I've learned is I always thought Audemars Piguet was the Royal Oak. Yeah, that's all I thought it was.
Yeah,
it was hype pieces, very sort of gentrification of all their collection basically. But from looking at your the pictures you publish, I've seen that there's quite exquisite Art Deco dress watchy heritage, a very long heritage of just beautiful watches, and not just the sports that we see now that everyone's after that costs loads of money. What could you tell our viewers about the real AP that we, people like myself, didn't know before, probably don't know now, in terms of the brand and the heritage of it?
I think it's important to understand that how watchmaking was. I mean, basically, these were small companies. Okay, Patek Philippe was always big even in its stature compared to the rest. But the way watchmaking was that, first of all, most of the manufacturing was not done in-house. So they bought components from outside. They chose designs of watches. I mean, I've read, a friend of mine, he's written this article, that a lot of the AP vintage designs were done by Gerald Genta, and he was selling the designs for 10 Swiss francs each. And even the case makers, I think for me, they're the unsung heroes of watch design. Now it's come to light. You can see a little symbol, whether it be a key or something, which tells you who the watch case maker was. I mean, these watch makers was, they worked individually. in their little homes up and down the Swiss valleys and made 12 cases, and they'll sell 6 to AP, 6 to Vacheron, or any other make and stuff. So that's why you see common designs across brands and stuff. So it wasn't all done in-house. So I think AP was adventurous in the sense that it bought from an experiment, especially after the war, with watch cases and stuff. And that's why they have a beautiful repertoire in their history, which sadly is sort of unsung. And, as you said, it's all about, the Royal Oak and stuff, which, okay, as a business, that's great. But I think, if you go, and I think they were undervalued until recently, because people didn't appreciate their heritage.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
There's a lot more romance, right? There's so much more romance to the original older pieces, I think, compared to these days with those watches.
Yeah, and then there's something about it. I mean, okay, a lot of people have the stigma, oh, it's too small and too small, but it's all in the mind. If you find a watch that's 35 or 34 too small, and if you have the confidence to wear it, it doesn't trouble you. Who cares what other people think? I don't give a shit. If I enjoy it, you enjoy it. That's how I see it.
Enjoy what you like. Don't enjoy what other people think you should have. You enjoy what you like, whatever. Right.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons, another reason why I collect what I do is I don't want to go for a dinner and see 5 other people wearing the same watch. Be it a Nautilus or whatever the other things are called. I like that the expression of individualism is important. I think.
Yeah, that speaks volumes, doesn't it? Of the Trinity brands and Cartier, which is your favorite piece from each watchmaker stroke maison?
From Cartier, it'd probably be, I'd choose 2, the Crash and one of the ones I've designed. So, okay, again, another moan. I keep moaning. So there's many, I've got a few Cartiers which I've designed besides the one I've shared. But unfortunately, they've told me that if you sort of show them to others and the others, people come and say they want the same one, we'll have to make it. So that pisses me off. So I'm not, and their answer was, I said, well, what do I do as a collector? They said, wear it in your living room and don't go out. That's exactly what
Don't let anyone see it. Don't put it on Instagram, whatever you do. Yeah.
I love it. I love that.
Okay, so that's Cartier. In terms of Patek, again, I'd choose 2. One is my perpetual calendar. The one. So this is the 5004, which I dreamt about, and it's like. So I went on the Dog and Pony show to Geneva, and Ed Butland, he was the manager, he's now the boss of bosses for the UK, and he said, well, if it was a dream, what would be your watch? And I said the 5004, and I said with Breguet numbers and black dial. And he says, okay, leave it with me. And of course, I didn't think, how I'm going to pay for this. Anyway, like a year and a half.
Worry about that later.
Yeah, a year and a half. They said, I've got some good news for you. Come over. And I went over, and he says, well, in between, he'd let me know. It makes a better story. So he says, okay, and they made it for me. And there's a special one-off piece, and it's before they retired this. It's for me, it's an absolutely gorgeous watch, and I'll always be thankful for them, as much as I moan about them all the time now. But and especially to Ed and all his team, so that would be one. And then in terms of vintage, I think they're too many. I really love some of the vintage designs. They make me very happy, and I love them. The Vacheron, probably the one I showed you.
Cornucopia.
Yeah, the Dolly's watch. Yeah. And then in terms of AP, there's several. I've got another one actually, which was a one-off from the 1950s, and it was so I started subscribing to the catalogs in the days of catalogs, and in my home I've got shelves and shelves. So there was one which came up in the auction, I think it was in the sort of mid-90s or mid-2000s. It's a beautiful, I should have taken that out to say. So that's my favorite. And it was in the auction catalog, and I said, well, let me just put it up on Instagram and saying, if I wish someone, I could, who has it would, tell me. And then the guy who had it, he bought it in the auction 15, 20 years ago, contacted me. He said, yeah, I don't even want to sell it. So that was an amazing story.
Oh, wow.
nice to get that. So yeah.
So which model was that?
It's a one-off piece.
Okay, it's on your Instagram though. Is it? Everyone's gonna have to
somewhere
log onto your Instagram. Yeah.
Amongst all the others, but I'll send it to you.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll put it up in this part. Yeah.
Right, we've got 2 minutes. I'm being the fun police now. We have 2 minutes left on this recording. So
an extremely quick question then.
Yeah.
Is it time? I think.
Yeah. Quick. Yeah.
Okay. In 2 minutes, which was the hardest piece to track down out of all of your collection? Which was the
so there was one called it's a Patek Philippe called the Devil's Horns. It's got like horns and with a black dial. I was looking for that 10, 15 years in the days when we had the watch forums. I used to keep posting every day, and I think it drove everyone bonkers. So anyway, it came up for auction at Antiquorum, and Charles Till was there, and I bid for it. And I was sitting in Uganda, as is. You've seen the phone lines are terrible, and I never bid live, and I get carried away at auctions, but the phone lines is the worry. So I put in a fixed price bid, and I lost it. And the guy who won it was Jason Singer, who's probably one of the most eminent sort of collectors of vintage watches based in the USA. And he read subsequently about, so I've been looking for 50. So he got in touch through Antiquorum and offered me the watch at the price he bought it at. Now, Jason's, I'll never forget that. And we, so that was so cool to get that watch. So that shows there are good people out there and stuff. So.
Definitely. That's a great
and
story.
answered in excellent timing as well. We got 30 seconds left.
Excellent. Roni, you've been an absolutely fantastic guest, and it's been an absolute pleasure to have you. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I'm most humbled you had me, and thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you for coming on at such short notice. We'd like to have perhaps you can come on again at some point after you've had your holidays. Yep, maybe as a live guest where people have seen the video, got to know you better, and then we have a panel with you, and we have people at the side who will chat to ask you random watch questions and stuff like that. I know a few people who are AP nuts, which you can bring in a few people. So it could be making a really interesting kind of interactive thing. You know what I mean?
Well, sounds like fun. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, it's been great. Thank you. So very quickly, just tell everybody quickly where they can find you in the world on the social media.
It's Instagram, and it's Roni _M_29, which is my age.
Of course.
Excellent. Yeah, I thought you were younger than that, Roni. Brilliant. Excellent.
Don't sell yourself short.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Roni. Thank you to my wonderful panel. Thank you, Palm, and thank you, Batch, again for putting this together at such short notice. We will just run the exit now, and we will we'll see you all again soon. Thank you so much, everybody.
So much.
Thank you.
And we will,
good night, everyone. And good night, Roni.
Yeah.
Bye.